Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and where we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And in today's episode, the topic is, will this be the biggest test for the Clippers this season? So that's the topic I want to get into in today's video. But before we get into that, I want you guys to please make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Also be on the lookout for our premium Dreamerspro premium community, Dreamerspro Max, and also be on the lookout for Dreamerspro.com, which will be coming after that. Anyway, let me get into this topic here. So the Clippers right now are getting ready to play the hottest team in the entire NBA. Given the fact that the Clippers have just won 4 games in a row, 2 of them without Kawhi Leonard, all of them without Paul George, who's missed the last 4 games or so. Last night's win was an amazing win, given the fact that they had 4 starters out. Think about this, 4 starters with Patrick Beverley, Nicholas Batum, Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George, and they still were able to get that win last night. To me, it was very impressive. But now they're going to be playing against the best team in the NBA as far as record, the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz have been on a tear this entire season. They've won 8 out of their last games. They won 8 games in a row. They've won 9 out of their last 10. And I'm sure they probably won at least 15 or 16 out of their last 17 games. The Utah Jazz have been that hot. They have their record, they have a winning percentage of 82.1. Just think about how crazy that is. The Utah Jazz, they're a very good team. They're very good on the road. They're 10-3 on the road, and they're 13-2 at home. So they're a very good team, right? And given the fact that now they're beginning to see fans in these games, I watched a bit of the game between them and the Philadelphia 76ers last night. I think they had about 3,000 fans in attendance. So they're beginning to have fans in these games. And once fans start coming in, we all know how difficult it is to win in Utah, and just how rabid those fans can be when they're being supportive of their team. Now, the Utah Jazz are no joke. Okay, they're one of the top 5 teams as far as offense. If you look at their scoring, think about this. The Utah Jazz are the number 4 team in the NBA, right behind the Clippers in scoring. They're averaging 115.7 points per game, but they're also a top 5 defensive team in the NBA. They're ranked number 3 on the defensive side of the floor, which is 2 positions higher than the Los Angeles Clippers. So they're a very good team on offense, and they're a very, very, very good team on defense. Another thing worth noting is that the Jazz and the Clippers have actually played each other once this season. Remember, they're going to meet 4 times because they're in the same conference. They've already played them one time this season, and they beat them the first time that they played earlier in this season, right? So it's not like as if this is the first time these 2 teams are meeting. These 2 teams have met once before, and the Jazz have gotten the better they've gotten the better of the Clippers. Now, obviously, the Clippers are a better team now than they were earlier in the season when they first met each other, because then, they were still integrating some new pieces, and the Jazz were not on the winning streak. They weren't playing as well as they are now back then. I mean, back then it was still early in the season. Now, another thing worth noting is that the Jazz have one of the leading candidates for regular season MVP. Now, in all of these rankings, I haven't heard the mention of Kawhi Leonard or Donovan Mitchell, and when they do mention him, they're mentioning them in that second bunch, right? I think the highest I've seen Kawhi Leonard ranked on the defensive on the MVP voting, I think, is like number 4. I think Donovan Mitchell is like number 6. Some people are talking about Stephen Curry. To me, I think it's just absurd that they don't have Donovan Mitchell ranked higher. Now, let's see if we can pull up Donovan Mitchell's stats this season. The guy's having a standout season. This year, he's averaging 24.2 points per game this season. He's getting you 4.3 rebounds, 5.1 assists, right? But he's doing all of that, shooting 43% from the floor, which isn't very, very good, but it's good. It's good enough. He could shoot better. Last season, he shot 45% from the field, but nevertheless, his team is still playing exceptionally well. He's shooting 39% from the 3-point line, which is 3% or 2.5 percentage points higher than he did the year prior. He's shooting 84% from the free throw line, and he's getting you just under a shade of 1 steal per game. Now, let's look ahead to this matchup, because remember, the Clippers and the Jazz are going to play each other back to back this week. I think they're playing on Thursday, and then I think they're playing on Saturday, right? A few things to pay attention to. Number one, I think that I'm hoping that the Clippers are going to have all of their starters back, because they're going to need every single one of their players to beat this Utah Jazz team. It's not like one of those things where, okay, they have Kawhi, then they have Patrick Beverley and Nicholas Batum, and then we're still waiting on Paul George. No. You need all of your horses in this race to be able to beat this Utah Jazz team, because they're red hot, and you need to make sure that you have enough offense out there for them to be able to, for them to play defense on, right? If you have a situation where Paul George is not back, it's just Kawhi Leonard, and their defense is able to key in on Kawhi Leonard, is going to put a lot of pressure on him. So first things first, before I even go into my breakdown, I think that the Clippers must have all of their 4 starters back in order for this thing to even be competitive. So let's get into it. So here are some of the things that I think need to happen, assuming that everybody's available. Number one, I think Paul George needs to win that matchup between him and Donovan Mitchell. Right, I just read off Donovan Mitchell's numbers. If I read off Paul George's numbers, they're averaging identical numbers, but Paul George is way more efficient. Okay, last time we saw Paul George, he scored 36 points. He hit 8 out of 9 3-pointers. Paul George is averaging 24.5 points per game. He's shooting 51% from the field, 48% from the 3, 90% from the free throw line. So his efficiency numbers are much higher across the board than that of Donovan Mitchell. He's getting you 6.2 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and he's getting you 1.2 steals. So Paul George is the better player between the two. If you just look at their numbers, if you look at their efficiency, I think it's clear as day to see who the better player is. Now, I think Paul George needs to win that matchup with Donovan Mitchell. Right? I think he needs to win that matchup, and I would like to see Paul George defend him. Now, obviously, he's not going to defend him exclusively. You have Kawhi and Paul George. You have Patrick Beverley, so you can give him different looks at certain points in the game. You also have Nicholas Batum that you can put on him at different times. But I think Paul George needs to win that matchup between him and Donovan Mitchell. On to Kawhi Leonard. I would expect Kawhi, or rather, I would hope, or Kawhi needs to score at least 30 points per game in all of these games for a few reasons. Number one, the team is going to need his offense. Okay, number one. Number two, there's no matchup for him on the floor. There's no one that the Jazz have that they can say exclusively go get him, right? I think Paul George and Donovan Mitchell can cancel each other out. Now, they do have some, the Jazz have some great players that can score, especially wings. I forgot some of their names. I watched. I remember Bo. Oh my God, I can't pronounce some of their names. I don't want to butcher some of their names, but I remember some of their players that they have with them. So I think Kawhi Leonard should be able to dominate any matchup that he has in front of him on the floor, and I think he needs to take advantage of that. Now, here are some things that the Clippers are going to need to do to come out with the win, especially these 2 wins that they're going to these 2 games that they're going to have to be able to be competitive and get these 2 wins. Number one, I think they need to come out focused. Usually the Clippers come out, sometimes they're focused, sometimes they're not. I think they need to come out focused from the jump. They need to come out with a lot of intensity, especially on the defensive side of the floor, and they need to make shots. That's going to be pivotal. They can't just come out, play great defense, and not hit shots. They need to hit shots. That's the first thing. Secondly, they need to rebound the basketball. Don't give the Utah Jazz so many second opportunities. They need to rebound the basketball, and a great way for them to rebound the basketball is for them to score, which allows them to get their defense set, which allows them to have a higher probability of actually getting stops than trying to get stops in transition. And that's why I mentioned the thing about scoring. Secondly, if they get off to a hot start, they need to be able to close out quarters very well, meaning close out the first quarter properly, close out the second quarter properly going into the half. The Clippers have had some issues understanding what teams are doing on the offensive side of the floor, on the offensive side of the ball for the first 2 quarters of games. Then usually in that third quarter, that's when they're able to come out and clamp down on teams. I think they need to be able to close out those first 2 quarters properly. Secondly, another thing that they need to focus on is keeping their turnovers down. You want to keep your turnovers down. You don't want to get this team open, get this team running, and get them in the transition game. Last night you saw Jordan Clarkson come off the bench and score 40 points, I believe it was, off the bench, which is just absurd, right? Because he just came in and just started hitting threes all over the place. Which brings me to my next point: they need to guard the 3-point line. Guard the 3-point line. The Jazz are going to be looking for the 3. So this means the Clippers need to be very active at the 3-point line. I'd rather trade 2 for 3s. They don't have so much of a scoring punch in the post. Rudy Gobert is not Shaquille O'Neal. He's not Kareem Olajuwon. So he's not going to be in there, scoring 35 points per game. So if they need to focus on getting those 3-pointers to get into those 3-pointers quick, 3-point shooters quickly and guard the 3-point line. I would like to see them keep the Jazz between 100 and 110 points as far as scoring, right? If they go beyond that 110, 115 threshold, then it becomes messy. Then it becomes anybody's game. If you get into a high scoring affair, then anything can happen. Anyone can get hot. But I think if you can keep them between 100 and 110, you're going to give yourself a good chance to be able to beat this team, because I saw this team yesterday. They come in waves, man. They come in waves, and you need to be able to score, but you also need to be able to defend, because they come in waves and waves and waves and waves and waves, and they just keep attacking. So if the Clippers do all of these things, I think they'll give themselves a good chance to win both of these games. If they don't, then it's going to be tough. Also, remember, I'm saying health is going to play a big role. All of the Clippers starters need to be available for them to have a shot against this team, in my opinion. So what I want to know from you guys is, do you think that this is going to be the toughest test for the Clippers as far as this particular stretch right now in the NBA? Or do you think, listen, it's not going to be that big of a deal? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. Again, if you enjoy the video, be sure to make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Once again, this is Charles here from Dreamerspro. Wishing you guys an amazing day, and catch you guys on the next episode. Peace.